again, like I have this one huge music biopic that I still have here. And I've told the producers, as soon as we get greenlit, I'll come back for 3 months and cast it. Like, there's nothing stopping me, and the flight's so easy. And I was like, I'll just come back and do it. There's no need for me to be here when we're on hold.
When you say something like that, so basically, run me through the process of this. You got hired on that job, or they're just holding you for that job?
So I got hired. It's kind of tricky. Like, it was one of my COVID babies, I call it, where like we had started right before COVID hit. And we had a director attached, and then it was an independent at the time. Cast our 4 leads right before COVID, then COVID hit.
You casted the 4 leads.
I casted, yes. And then COVID hit, and they're like, we don't really know what's happening. Let's wait.
Pause. Got
and
it.
then during that, we have a very well-known producer who's won Oscars and stuff. So he then
Steven Spielberg.
Yes, that's no. He's very talented. Stuart Benjamin is his name, but he won for Ray and La Bamba and stuff like that. So he's very in the music side of films. But he then set it up at STX during COVID. But then STX came back and said, well, you have an indie cast. For your budget, you have to go back and recast it.
I see.
So then we go back and recast it, also switched directors in that time, and then started to recast that. And then we've now switched directors again and rewrote the script. And literally maybe about 1 rewrite away prior to the strike to being greenlit. And then the strike happened. So now we're just waiting. So go ahead.
This is something fascinating to me because I'm an idiot. I'm going to just put this out there.
You're not.
Well, no, I feel that's why I love this podcast. I'm learning stuff all the time. I never even think, no offense, that they would hold a casting director for that whole thing.
And they don't
I would
pay us.
assume. But they pay you when the casting happens.
Yeah. So you get paid like 1 holding fee at the very beginning.
Oh, for each session.
Well,
for
for 4, so pretty much like in our deals, how it's done, and I've started to change kind of the way, because especially during COVID, people started to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Is usually you would get like, I don't know, $5,000 to cast the top 2 roles.
Yeah.
Because they should have enough developmental funds to pay you.
Yeah.
And I will say, one of my old bosses gave me the best piece of advice. She was like, if they don't have $5,000 to pay a casting director to get their cast to get it financed, their movie will never get made.
Yeah.
Or it will get made very poorly.
Yeah.
And so I've always kind of used that as my, like, you have to pay me something to help you get your movie financed. Right. And it's become, especially in the indie space right now, it's becoming so much that the casting directors are almost producers at this point, because we play such a role in getting people attached. And people don't have the personal relationship. Like, producers used to just like be really close friends with actors and be like, hey, do you want to do my film?
Yeah.
And that would get them their financing. So you don't really need a casting director for that. And that's becoming very unknown, because you have a lot of a newer crop coming up who just don't have those relationships.
Right.
Which then they come to us and make us pull our favors, call in, call certain people that we know. And there's so many times where, like, that's what I don't understand in indies, like, why people feel okay to be shitty, because it's like, you are being horrible to me. You're paying me $2,000 to get your movie
Steven
financed.
Spielberg.
Yeah. They wish. But then they come to me and they're like, pull all your favors, Jenna. I'm like, why would I do that? You've treated me so poorly.
Okay, so let's say a 6-month run or whatever to produce a movie. I don't know what a number is, but like a flawless end to end, they would pay you the $5,000 or whatever fee to cast the movie, right?
Cast the leads. So we call it consulting.
Okay.
And then after you get the leads and they get their financing in place, or sell it, or get a studio on board or something like that, then you get your full casting.
Does every movie do that?
Indies,
or just indies?
For the most part.
Okay.
Indies, and then sometimes studios, but mostly studios are financed by the time they greenlight something.
Right. Okay. So I always just assumed if it went flawlessly from start to end, you got 1 fee to do the bit of casting, and then you were done. If they wanted to recast, I never knew, or maybe it isn't always this, but I didn't know they stuck with you or held you necessarily.
Yeah.
Had you on a veil, if you will, for it.
Yeah.
And so that's becoming more the norm, you're saying.
It is.
And then they pay you the second time, or no? You're saying the one for the...
Well, it depends. I fight for it. So I know some casting directors are like, well, I've already put in the work. It's fine, whatever. I tend to push back pretty hard, because I think, like, after... I don't know, 3-4 months of you doing work for $5,000. That's less than $1,000 a month. Yeah. And then you're like, okay, can you give me something else? Just like as a show of like, we're doing it, we're on the right track. Like we know it's just going to take a little bit longer, but especially with COVID, every producer used it's COVID. We don't know.
Right.
We can't keep paying you every 6 months because we don't know when this movie's going to get made. We don't know when the pandemic's going to end. And now I feel like it's spilling over to just being a norm now.
Yeah. How often, though, does that process happen where you cast the leads or something and then they switch casting?
Not very.
Really? That's cool.
Well, so I purposely now, especially when they don't pay you a lot to consult, and what we were kind of seeing, especially as like the younger generation of casting directors, is that what would happen is they would bring us on for cheap because we're cheap.
Right.
And because we're building our resumes.
Cheap and 5'6".
I'm giving you a lot of good one-liners here. But like they'll bring us on, and then like Mary Vernoothen would come in and be like, "Yeah, I'll take it." And then they get the quote unquote big casting name, but then we did all the work. So to stop that from happening, what I've started doing is I'll create a consulting deal that's tied to an active casting deal.
Yeah.
So that I say, if I cast these 2 leads for you, you automatically pay me I automatically get first like right of refusal.
Yeah.
If you don't want to use me, that's fine. You have to pay out my fee.
Amazing. And I heard you and Jessica talk about that on the podcast at one point.